We got called into the office and sat down, and it felt like a trip to the principal's office. And they kind of flipped around the computer monitor, and it's like, "We found your website." It's like, "Yeah, what do you think?" We were supposed to be kind of in shock and awe about this. And Chris just kind of speaks up all of a sudden. They're trying to kind of, not threaten us, but they're letting us know they're serious about this. And Chris just goes, "Hey, I'll just cut the tension. Listen, if you guys are saying it's this job or this side thing, I'll make this easy. I'll take the side thing." And I'm like, "Yep, me too. Let's go."
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Standing Before Kings podcast, where we talk to entrepreneurs, artists, and creators who have pursued excellence in their craft. My name is Jed Hicks. I've been working with Nate Rich for almost a year now, and today's kind of a special episode. Usually, Nate is the host of the show, but today I'm going to be interviewing him to hear more about his story and how he got into the video production world and how he started his company, Honest Films. Before we get into that, just a little bit more about Honest Films. If you go to their website, it says, "Honest Films is a commercial video production company that makes people believe. We partner with authentic, storied brands to create short films, broadcast commercials, and animations that carve out a lasting home in people's hearts." Since its founding, Honest Films has worked for a host of top brands, including North Face, Kroger, Starbucks, Google, Ford, and a bunch of others. Nate is the founder and executive producer at Honest Films, which he started back in 2016. This is pretty fun for me because I've, heard bits and pieces of Nate's story, but I'm excited to dive deeper into it and talk about his journey along the way. So thanks for joining me, Nate.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited.
Cool. Well, to get started here, I guess the first question is just, how did you get into the video production world? What set you on that path?
I grew up, as a church kid doing my parents were in ministry. And so that meant we were at church all the time, even when church wasn't happening, but, getting ready for, during band practice or whatever it might be. And so there were, for a little kid who was there were a couple fun options to keep busy. There was the drum kit, which my dad played drums. So I was like, "Hey, Dad, can I go play your drums?" "Yeah, sure." So I got to play around on the drums. And then there was a soundboard. And of course, that is like, technology all over the place, flashing lights. And it's like, "Hey, all right, I can play on this thing." So, and then one other piece, my real beginning to the AV world, if you were born after like 2000 for sure, you won't really know what a transparency machine is. But back in church in those days, all the words are up on the wall so everybody can read them. We had these transparent sheets that had the lyrics of the hymns of the songs laserjet printed on there. And so somebody had to run that machine. And so that was my job. So that was kind of my intro into the AV world, I guess. My dad was always kind of a tech guy. So he was sort of what you call like a white hat hacker. He was always, big into tech. He started one of the first internet service providers in North Florida, where we're from. Was always doing a bunch of stuff with Unix. And so from an early age, I was learning Perl and Visual Basic and C# and stuff like that. So I had this tech side of me that I really liked a lot. So I always kind of thought I would wind up following Dad into that line of work. Well, I got into high school. We moved away from Florida, got up to Colorado, got into high school, and I had a friend invite me to audition for the drama department's a production in the fall. And I had done a little bit of that kind of stuff again in church growing up, but never really seriously. Well, I auditioned for this show and I got one of the leading roles and I loved it. It was a lot of fun. And I had a great director, Miss Lynn Fleming at Northland High School. And she really encouraged me to kind of stick with this and kind of see if this creative thing could turn into something for me. And because she knew I was planning to kind of go into, computer science or something like that. But she really encouraged me, "Hey, you should, kind of try this out. You might regret it if you didn't." And so I thought, well, I don't want to do theater because I would like to have an economically viable career. I don't think theater will probably give me a good shot at that, but maybe film and television. And so I went into college into writing and directing and kind of liked it. I wound up switching my emphasis out of writing and directing because it was very subjective. The professors would say ridiculous things like "there's no good and bad," it just is. And of course, I knew that wasn't true. I could look at the work and say, "No, that work is bad for sure, and that work is really good," and there's a difference. And furthermore, if I'm going to go out into the job market with this degree, how am I supposed to get a job if there is no good or bad? How am I supposed to say that I'm good at this? Or so that just didn't line up with what I thought was right. So I switched back into post production, or I switched over into post production, editing, animation, things like that. And that was cool. That I really took to that because that brought back in the technical aspect. And so it had the creative side. It was also very logical with how to tell a story, how to work a narrative. But then there was you're always on a computer, and there's quite a bit of tech that goes into post production. And so I kind of followed that, and I wound up about I think a semester and a half into college. My dad encouraged me to try and find a job in the business before I, continued down this path. Like, hey, let's see if you actually like this in the real world. I think he probably thought I wouldn't. But to all of our surprise, I actually found an entry level job at a place at a post production facility that was one of the best ones in Denver at the time, and I kind of got to launch my career there, and I was able to do a lot of really neat stuff there, work on really big projects for national brands, and kind of really cut my teeth in a legit place. So it was a huge blessing.
So you were at school and then you started working this job at a video production company in town. During that phase, do you remember like what were some of the biggest lessons as far as the industry and your attitude towards it?
The industry was changing a lot then. So this would have been in 2005. So this was right before what they call the DSLR revolution. So when everybody had access to a camera that could shoot beautiful, footage. Now I have one sitting here as a webcam. Like they're everywhere. So this was just before that. So the cost of entry into getting into doing any kind of video production was huge. A camera that was going to make something look decent. People were still shooting on film quite a bit, even for just commercials. But for a digital camera that was going to look good, it was still 50, 60, $100,000 easily. Edit systems were very expensive. Now we can just have a laptop or even do your editing in the cloud from a very kind of weak computer. But back then, an Avid system was $100,000, and it had a big back end, kind of server and like mainframe type stuff. So it was a real time of change. And then you had people like from my generation coming in, who I think just brought a much more scrappy attitude of like, well, we don't have all that, but what we do have is this. And so what I can do is, here's what I can kind of figure out to do with all this. YouTube was kind of just getting its feet under it seemed like. And so you could kind of go there and, how do I do this effect? How do I make the iPod Nano commercial effect? Well, here's how you do it. And so that's how we learned things. But the business itself, it was a business that was kind of built on having a capital intensive operation. So, they had millions of dollars of equipment there, and they really hung their hat on that, which made a lot of sense for a long time. But then guys like me came in and said like, well, I can do all this on a laptop, or I can figure out like, I don't have the experience. I don't have the years and the scars and the skills and stuff like you guys do. So I got to learn from them, but then apply that to this sort of new scrappy model. And then DSLRs came along. You had the Canon releasing the 5D and people being able to shoot video on it. You had the Panasonic GH1 come out. People started shooting on it. And so now for a couple $1,000s and a lens you could go buy at a thrift store, you could make stuff that looked really, really cool. So all that was happening as I was getting in the business. And so I was sort of on two sides. I had ad agency people coming in and paying, $150, $200 an hour to sit in this room and edit with me, shooting on film, doing all this crazy stuff. And then on the other side, in my own life, I was like, buying one of these cheap cameras and figuring out how to make it work. So it was a really cool time to get in the business. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're saying kind of what kicked off Honest Films was kind of this realization that the entry point was a lot lower. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. So I was probably about 3 or 4 years into that job. And this was we were just doing editing there, but we worked with people who were doing production. So we got to see how all that was going. But a few years into that is when these cameras started coming out. And a buddy of mine, Chris, and I, we'd gone to college together, and then he had come to work at the same company. We were kind of the same mind, and we were like, man, let's buy one of these cameras and just start shooting some stuff. Like, we I guess nobody's going to give us permission, but let's just do it. So I went and bought a camera. He bought some other things, and we just started kind of doing stuff on our own. And it kind of turned into a little bit of a side business, to the point where even though he and I were both doing real high end work at that place, we still had we were the guys who started at the bottom there. And so they were never going to really pay us what in our youthful arrogance thought we were worth, right? And so we were quickly on the side able to basically make what we were making at our day jobs. And so and we had talked to them about this and said, hey, we'd love to make more money, but if we, basically you need to like double our salary, or we're going to have to do something else. Well, they said they wouldn't. And so we started doing something else on our own time. And they, got wind of it or whatever, which we weren't trying to hide it. But we got called into the office and sat down, and it felt like a trip to the principal's office. And they kind of flipped around the computer monitor, and it's like, we found your website. It's like, yeah, what do you think? Like, and we were supposed to be kind of in shock and awe about this. But yeah, they did not want us doing that. Well, my friend Chris was great because typically he's a pretty shy, like humble, quiet kind of a dude. And I'm kind of sitting there, usually the more kind of loud and bold one. And Chris he just kind of speaks up all of a sudden. They're trying to kind of, not threaten us, but they're letting us know they're serious about this. And Chris just goes, hey, I'll just cut the tension. Listen, if you guys are saying it's this job or this side thing, I'll make this easy. I'll take the side thing. And I'm like, yep, me too. Let's go. And so we quit that day and started doing stuff on the side. The Great Recession came along at that point. We wound up working at other places for other people for a while, but that was sort of the sort of first appearance of what would become Honest Films.
Crazy. So, okay, that's when it went from part-time on the side to like full-time. This is what we're doing.
Well, only for a few months. So I had been hunting down other opportunities at the time, and I had gotten an interview at another company up in Boulder, Colorado, that was going to allow me to be an editor, but then also move into some other things as well, which is what I wanted to do. The recession had just started. It was like, okay, I'll take this job. This will be a good growth opportunity for me. I can apply some of these same skills there. I can keep learning. I remember I'd only been doing this business I'd only been in this world about 5 years. So I thought I was an expert, but I still had a lot to learn. So I got to go there, and I stayed there for another 4 years and was able to do some things I really had no business being allowed to do. Like, I showed up with my little camera and I just shot like a third angle of an interview we were doing, and the director got it back and was like, this is the best looking thing we've ever shot. And now I'm shooting things for them. And I had no training in that. I really didn't know what I was doing. And then kind of the same thing happened with directing. It was like, hey, do you mind if I like kind of take a crack at running this shoot? And they're like, yeah, why not? And I did, and it went well. And so now I'm a director, and now I'm a DP, and now I'm an editor. And then I, started doing some writing at that company. So now I'm an associate creative director, and I'm getting these opportunities that I really didn't have any business getting, but I was able to make the most of them and turn them into something. I left that company after about 4 years. I got offered a kind of a minor partnership with a couple of buddies of mine who I'd met back at the other company who were on the advertising agency side. And they were starting an agency and they wanted someone to kind of run video for them. So I did that for a couple of years. And then a month before my wife and I got married, I decided to leave that and start Honest Films. So I started Honest Films a month before we got married because I thought that would be the least stressful thing.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like, why on earth would you do that? Like, what was the inspiration to drop what you were doing and start your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, it for sure was crazy. But actually, I mean, running your own business is, of course, very stressful, but it's a different kind of stress. It's a stress that you can be in control of. I mean, business owners will laugh at that because a lot of times we think that, but it's really our clients that control us. The phone rings and okay, now I guess we're going to Florida to do this production, right? So, but you are in the driver's seat. I mean, one way or the other, you submit to those clients, but it's still you deciding to do it. So I just felt like being in that role, going into my new marriage, would allow me to have more freedom. And I knew, okay, if it's just me, I need to try and put together, I don't know, 70, $80,000 a year. That'd be terrific. Well, if I do this job, that job, this job, and that job, I can do that. And so, like, let's go. Now, I did make a backup plan. I called a friend of mine who worked at another agency in town. I said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. If this is the stupidest thing I've ever done and I fall flat on my face, do you think I might be able to get a job at your company? And he was like, for sure. Yes. If this doesn't work, for sure. And here's what we'd be able to pay you. And I was like, wow, that sounds actually pretty great. But good to know. So I did have a backup plan. I wasn't gonna just get married and just go, hey, who knows, like, so I did have a backup plan, but it was kind of a Geronimo type of a situation. So
Did you give yourself like a timeline where it was, we're going to try this Honest Films thing for a year, and if it takes off, then so be it? Or were you kind of like, let's just see where it goes?
yeah, it was more like that. I mean, I always knew that I wanted to run a business. My family has been very entrepreneurial. My grandparents ran a Christian bookstore in my hometown. My dad has started probably 20 businesses. He's sold a couple of businesses. So I just kind of grew up around that and I was kind of used to that. I'm not risk averse. I'm very optimistic, overly so, a lot of times, and that has to be balanced out. But I just kind of thought, all right, this is what we're going to do. I didn't have the insight then that I have now. So it's not like I can say, no, I had this perfect plan and at year 3 we're going to look like this and do that. It was just like, this seems like the next right thing to do. And so let's do it.
That's so awesome. So you said your parents, like seeing what your parents were doing, being productive, running their own business was inspirational. Like, can you get into that a little bit? What were some of the main things you remember seeing them do and looking up to?
There were those elements for sure, and I can talk about those, but more so than that, it was more of just like, well, this is what we do. This is like people like us, just this is what we do. Like this is what we do in my family is just we start a business.
Okay, so that was kind of always the plan, kind of the trajectory.
Like when I look back now, yes. If you asked me then, I probably would have said, yeah, like I like business and I mean, I think that probably was always the plan. I mean, as a young person, you don't articulate those plans always and you really don't know what the future holds. And so you may not actually put that plan out there. But yeah, I think that was always, yeah, in some way, shape, or form, I wanted to either lead a business or start a business or something. Um, so yeah, I mean, and then as far as the inspiration for it, I mean, I think I just always saw my dad work really, really hard, and always be that kind of like visionary, always kind of have those ideas of, oh, we could do this, we could do that, and never seem to be like negative about it. Even whenever in the times where I know he was struggling, running businesses and having huge payrolls and having to worry about deals falling apart and struggling with partners and all that. It was never like, oh, this was a mistake. Like, you running a business is dumb. It was just like, oh, this is hard, you know. Um, but yeah, man, now I'm thinking about starting this other business. So it was always just kind of like, this is just what we do.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, that's such a blessing that you had that growing up. A lot of people don't have that.
Or they have it go in the other direction. They have it go in the direction where it's like dad is always getting fired because he's, lazy, or because of whatever. And so then that gets passed down. It's like, oh, this is what people like us do. We're lazy. We show up late to work. We don't work hard. We always blame others for our problems. Like, that's just as generational.
Yep. Yeah, and in both cases, no one would verbalize it. Like we wouldn't say it out loud, but
They would just live it.
yep, that's right. Well, okay, so kind of coming back to the story, uh, you have this moment where you full committed. We're gonna do this thing. Um, what were those early days like? How were you finding clients? And what were some of the bigger challenges you faced? Just getting it off the ground, going full time.
Well, the first thing I'll say is the nice thing when it's just you don't have to make that much because it's just you. You don't have an office. Whatever gear you decide to buy, that's up to you. You basically just have to make enough to survive. And that's a really good place to be in when you're starting a business, because you don't have to, well, I have to make payroll and we have to cover insurance and we have to do this and rent is due here. Like, you can just tighten your belt. You can just go, yeah, well, we only made $1,000 this month. So that really is rough, but okay, like, now we're on to next month, like, just hustle harder. Right. So that was a huge blessing. I also had, I mean, probably the number one thing that has paid so many rewards over the years is just really taking good care of my relationships with people, with customers, whether they're customers or whether they're just people that I worked with. If I was their editor and they were a copywriter, I got along with them. Not because it wasn't like I was trying to manipulate, like I wanted to get along with them so I could get something out of it. I just tried to be a good guy and tried to get along with them. And then 5 years later, out of nowhere, they'd call me and say, hey, I started an agency and I need this video. And I remember you being pretty good. And I'd be like, great, and there's $5,000. Okay, we made our money for the month. And then that would happen in different ways and different levels and stuff. And then you just keep doing the same thing. You keep taking good care of that person and actually caring about them, not treating them as a means to an end, but going like, cool, I want to do a good job on this because this person has trusted me. And that seems to work out pretty well. So I had a couple of relationships like that. And so I just kind of pieced together the work that I could. And then you get kind of a terminal velocity, I guess. And now you're okay. Now we have a routine. Now I need a little bit more help. Gosh, I'm doing a lot of editing. I better bring in somebody. And if I had to do it over again, I probably would not hire as much as quickly. But because my goal was always I wanted to build a business, I didn't just want to be a bunch of freelancers. I wanted to actually be a business with a culture and an identity and a set of people that were kind of known, that customers could look and go, yep, that's Nate, that's Chris, that's Ryan, that's Joe. And who you're working with consistently. I thought that made a big difference. And so it just kind of grew from there. And we never did any like outbound, sales, like let's go hunt down these different people. It was kind of just relationships that I had curated over, I guess, 12, 13, 14 years at that point. And then they kind of just started paying dividends.
Yeah. What was hiring your first person like? And specifically like starting to learn how to lead people. Was that a very new experience, or did it feel like it came pretty naturally? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's tough. Hiring people is really hard. The first one was very easy though, because it was my buddy Chris, who I had gone to college with, who I'd worked with my at the first place. We had quit that job together. We had already kind of worked together in that capacity. We had worked at the next company I went to. We worked there together, and so we had always stayed in touch. Our personalities really, I think, fit together really well. Um, and so actually making that hire was really easy. It was another one of those things where it was like, yeah, this is just the next thing to do. This was always going to happen. It just makes sense. So making that one was easy. And and we probably could have just stayed that way for a long time. And actually that, in retrospect, there would have been a lot of benefit to that. But I saw us growing more, and we got a lot more business, and so we needed help. And rather than just sort of piecemeal, contractors here and there together, it's like, all right, let's do this. We're getting the opportunities. Let's build this thing. And so then making that the hire after that, the which is, I would say, the first real hire who wasn't just my buddy, right? We actually had to like go out and look for people and interview and things like that. That was really tough. And that has always been really tough. And that's still really tough. Then you think you've got someone who you think fits all the bills. You look past certain things, like there are red flags, with everyone, but you kind of choose, all right, I'm going to look past this one because I really like this, and then you bring that person in. But then managing people is really tough. I think everyone thinks, oh, just give me a good person and then I can teach them skills. Like the skills, that's I can just teach them that, or they can learn that. Give me just a good person to work from. Well, that's true. You can do that, but you have to actually do it. It doesn't just happen by being there. And so it's easy to talk about, oh, I'll train all these people, but then you're busy running a company. You don't have time to train a bunch of people, right? And then you realize that they're human beings, and so you start training them, and then they push back. Well, why do we do it that way? That seems dumb. I'd rather do it this way. And it's like, oh, this is hard, like this is this is a lot harder than I thought. So yeah, and I don't know that I've ever really nailed that, honestly. I'm not like, that's a weak point for me. Like when I've done well, it's just been because like I've found the right person and they just fit, and we just run together.
Yeah. During those early days, like when it was really starting to ramp up, you're starting to hire people and starting to run into some of those issues with managing. Uh, was there ever like a point where you felt really stressed out, or were even like considering throwing in the towel and like just going back to a day job?
Yes, there were plenty of times where I felt very stressed out. Some of my most stressful moments in the business, they rarely have to do with the work itself. All of the most stressful moments, the things that I would stay awake at night, laying in bed thinking of, the things that I'm thinking of in the shower in the morning, that I'm driving to work thinking of, are dealing with people and employees. So thinking of, man, I really wish this person wouldn't, I really wish this person wouldn't keep doing this or that. How do I get him to do that? How do I get him to see the way that I see? How do I get him to care about this different thing, but without squashing this other part about them that I really love? So there's like all this like, and I just tend to overthink things anyways. So those were the biggest stresses. I never thought about, oh, I'll just go get a day job. But what I did think a lot about is, man, having these employees is not always what it's cracked up to be. So maybe it would be better to just have a different type of a model. And I struggled with that, you know, and I still struggle with that.
Yeah. And at that point, like, how are you thinking about trying to be a leader? I feel like, I've had a couple opportunities where I need to lead people. And there's a really interesting balance between you want to be their friend and you want to like be on their team and you want to be the sort of person that they want to follow, right? Um, but you also don't want to be so buddy buddy that they don't, respect you, right? And uh, did you struggle with that balance in the early days?
Oh yeah. I still struggle with that because I want it's my personality to like, I want to get along with you. I don't want to criticize you, but your edit kind of sucks and I need it to be better, you know? And hey, I know that you think that we're all just cool and stuff, but I need you to not show up to work at 9:30 in sweatpants and ask if anybody wants to go get coffee. Like, I've been here since 7:30. I need you to work harder, you know? But I tend to be way too black and white. I'm either like your best friend or I'm like giving you the silent treatment, which is that's not good, right? That's not good. That's not good leadership. So what I've learned is yes, I have to be very intentional, good church word, about maintaining that relationship in the right way and keeping myself from being too buddy buddy. Like, but it's a very hard line to walk because then at the same time it's like, well, this is my company that I started and I want it to go and I want to get along with the people I work with. And I want to be pals. I want to be able to say, "What's up, Jed? How was your weekend? Like, how's it going with that girl?" But I also need to be able to say, "Hey, you missed that deadline and I need you to not do that. That makes us look really bad." I need to be able to I want to be able to do both things. I have to be able to do the second thing. Even if it comes at the expense of the first, too bad. I have to maintain a good business because I've promised our customers that we will deliver for them. So I can't let my desire to be your buddy get in the way of that.
Yeah. This is maybe a more in-depth question, and if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. But what was the first fire you ever had to make, and how did that go down? Like, what was the reason you decided this isn't going to work?
Yeah, it's tough. It was with not the first guy that I talked about hiring, but the one after that. And great guy, one of the most talented people that I've ever worked with, but we had to sit down and have a tough conversation because I could tell he didn't respect me and he didn't like the way that I worked. And he would tell you this today. We're friends now. Uh, but I had to sit him down and say, like, listen, man, like, this is my company. If you're going to work here, if you're going to take my money, like, you got to respect me, you know, like, you just have to, because this won't work if you don't. And he was like, you're right. I should do that. I apologize that I haven't done that. And unfortunately, I apologize that I'm not going to be able to do that. And so I need to quit.
It's just another example of, um, you know, it's hard. It's hard running a business, and you have to do things that really push you out of your comfort zone. For some of us, that's having those sorts of hard conversations. My question then is, what was motivating you to push through those things, right? Because those are pretty hard things to push through, and I'm more curious specifically in those early days, like what were kind of your personal motivations?
If you're going to run a business, if you're going to sign up to be a leader or to run a business, I would bet that 99% of your problems and your stressors are not going to be the actual doing of the business. So if you're signing up to run a video production company, the video production part will not be the part that stresses you out. You're really good at that. The people you hire are really good at that. That won't be the problem. It'll be other things. It'll be clients or money or or interpersonal issues dealing with employees. It'll be those kind of things. Number two, you better learn to get good at having really hard conversations. And I had a mentor, and it might have been the first time I had to hire or had to let somebody go, or a tough conversation with some partners, but he pretty much told me that, like, listen, man, buddy, you're going to have to get good at having hard conversations. And so I've just kind of leaned into that over the years. I don't enjoy them anymore, but I see them as exercise, I think. And so what motivated me and what helped me to push through to have those hard conversations, it was kind of just like a man up type of a thing. Like, listen, buddy, you decided to start this company, okay? You decided to tell all these customers that you would take care of them. You decided to tell all these people that you would pay them once a month and that you would give them work to do. If you're going to do that and you already have signed up to do that. Well, this is what goes along with it. It's like being a dad or being a husband, far less important than those things. But hey, man, you signed up to have a kid. Well, he's throwing up in bed at 3 in the morning. You have to go in there. I don't care if you don't want to. Yeah, it sucks, but you have to do it. And so it's sort of the same mentality. It's just kind of like, well, I signed up to run a business, and so I guess I have to fire someone now. Just this is part of the deal. If you want to be a big boy, if you want to have a company, you're going to have to do really hard things. And so now is one of those times.
Yeah. So as you continue to scale the company, hire more people, find more clients, were there any like particular strategies that you found really helpful in the scaling process? Or was it kind of just, figuring out as you went?
I mean, it was all figuring out as I went, for sure. But I guess some things that I stumbled on along the way were competing on price is really tough, and it's not really what you want to do. There's a time for it, but you kind of want to be in your zone. Like you want to, there's a proper place to be for pricing, and you want to be in that place. You don't want to be way down here. If you're way down here, that's a different kind of a business. And there are places for those kinds of businesses for sure. But for our business, I had to realize like, okay, we kind of need to be here. Well, I always wanted the prices to be lower because I wanted people to like me. I wanted customers to go, "Oh, wow, you can do it for that. That's great." I wanted to get them to say yes to me. And so, well, sure, if I could do it for cheap, they'll probably say yes and they'll probably be real happy. But that doesn't work so well when you're trying to build a business, when you've got 10 employees, when you have an office, when you have, tons of equipment and things like, and furthermore, when you want to do really premium work, it is going to cost a lot of money. It's very expensive. So realizing that I needed to kind of be in a certain price range and just leaning into that. Also, as far as bringing it, a lot of people are afraid to talk about money, and they shouldn't be. You should get on the phone with your customer, your potential customer, and they're going to say, "Hey, we make rocket parts and we want a new video about ourselves and we're really excited. And here's yada, yada, yada about the video. That sounds great. What do you guys have budgeted for that?" Like, most people are afraid to ask that question. Why? When you go to a car lot and you're looking to buy a car, it's like, well, sure, I can, hey, I would like a car. Okay, great. Here's a McLaren. Well, no, that's not, I don't have that kind of money. Oh, okay. What kind of money do you have? Well, I have like $12,000. Okay. Here's a Mazda, like, just don't be afraid to ask that question. And that saved me so much time early on in the business. We'd have these calls with people who wanted work, and I'd get so excited. Oh man, this project sounds great. I'd go and spend a week building a proposal for them. I'd give them the budget. The budget might be something like $35,000, $40,000. And they'd come back and, it'd be like a 1-line reply like, "Oh, that's way out of our budget. We have $2,000. So I just wasted a week of my life and my brain power, my heart. I got super excited about something. So after that having happened a few times, I just said, I'm not getting off of the phone. I'm not sending a proposal to someone unless I have said some numbers to them on a call. Now, they don't have to tell me our budget is $28,650, but I am on that call going to go, yeah, a project like this is usually between 25 and 30 grand. And then I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to shut up and wait. And if they go, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy." Okay, now I can switch into helper mode, which is if they say, "No, we just have $1,500, I can go, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that won't work for us. We wouldn't be able to do anything for that level. But here's what you could do. You could reach out to such and such or so and so, or maybe, hey, you could buy this gear." And I can kind of still try and help them, but I'm kind of making my way for the door at that point, right? I'm not going to invest any more time. But then the opposite happens a lot of times where they'll go, "Yeah, we've got about 60,000 planned for this." I was on a call with a customer today. She told me all about this project that they need. And I said, "So what are you thinking you've got for budget?" And I'm thinking, you know, I don't know what this is going to be. And I ask, and she says, we've got about $150,000. And I go, great. Now I can just go make the budget. And it might even wind up being less than that, right? I'm going to be honest. I'm not just going to make things up, because that's not going to be taking good care of people, but I'm not going to waste my time either. That was a huge learning thing. And that helped a lot. Just to get it out there, there's a guy, Joel Pilger, who does a lot of teaching in this world in video production and creative studios, and he said something great. If a project doesn't have a budget or a timeline, it is not a project. It is just, they're just kicking tires. And it's true. If you don't have a budget, if you don't have a timeline, you don't have a project. Now, we can still talk and bat around ideas, but I'm not going to go and build you a proposal, because I spent a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Was there ever a time, like before you learned some of those lessons, where you majorly underquoted a client, or maybe put together a bad timeline uh, that really backfired?
I mean, the backfiring that happens is in your personal life, because you've said, I will get this project done by this time. And that might be totally unrealistic, but you just bear down and make it happen. And you're working late, and you're gone a lot more than you want to be, and you're putting so much into it. But you have a lot of capacity, right? You have a lot of capacity in you, and so and you're saying failure's not an option. I'm going to make this work. So you just make it work. So the client doesn't experience any backfiring. You do, personally. But maybe not even a way that cost actual dollars, but it cost you your time. And so then you go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said yes to that. I probably shouldn't have said I could pull that off in that amount of time.
Yeah. Well, that kind of ties in nicely to something we talked about earlier, which is, you were really blessed by having a dad who was working a lot and running his own business. And I'm assuming he took his business seriously, right? Like he was really pursuing it. But there always is a balance, right? Like, how do I balance between loving my family and setting a great example for them of what it looks like to work hard and be serious about your mission, while also just spending quality time with them? How have you thought about those things?
I've thought about them a lot. That's the hardest part about this job, without a doubt. That is the hardest part. Is people talk about work-life balance or whatever, but making sure that you are not letting your commitment to other people outweigh and out prioritize your commitment to your people, to your wife, to your children, to your family, and the things that matter to them, because it's really easy to do that because they love you and they'll let you get away with it, right? But we can't allow that to happen. We can't take advantage of that situation. So it's really hard, especially for someone running a business and you want to say yes. So that's the hardest part, is making sure that you keep your priorities right, and remember why you work in the first place. Remember why you're trying to make money in the first place. It's for your family. Remember why your company is on a mission in the first place. Like, I want to make films that make a positive impact on the world, that point people towards Christ, that point people towards the good life, the real good life. Well, why do I want to do that? Because I want my son and my daughter to grow up in a better world. I want my grandkids to grow up in a world where businesses reflect the principles of the kingdom of God. So I want to work really hard to make that happen, but I don't want to do that, you know, at the expense of the here and now today with them, because then they'll look at that and go, yeah, that's great that dad did that, but he wasn't there for me when I needed him. And so it's tough. It's the hardest thing. And I don't know exactly how to balance that. I know you have to keep your priorities right. And sometimes it might mean that you have to say no to something you really want to do. It's easy to say no to bad projects. Like, I learned that a long time ago. Let's just get the bad projects out. Don't do those. But if I'm sitting here looking at, I've got 10 really good projects in front of me right now, they're going to require me to be gone every week out of state for the next 2 months. That's not good. That's not good for my family. So what do I have to do? that's what you have to figure out.
Yeah. Well, so as you kind of explained that, it seems like your faith is pretty central to it. Not only how you're thinking about your work, but also your family. It kind of puts them into the same categories. They're both part of the mission, right? What is that mission? If you were to say it, yeah, what is that mission, and how does your faith play a role into it?
First of all, I'll say that it's a daily grind to make that be the mission, because my sinful self wants to wake up and serve myself. I don't want to wake up and look out for other people and do the right thing every day. I want to wake up and be selfish. But I know that that's not the route to a good life for myself and my family and other people. And so I have to remind myself of that daily, throughout the day, and just sort of make myself bend in that direction by the grace of God. So that's the first thing. The mission is, I mean, I guess first and foremost, the mission is to have a business where I get to do something that I think I'm really good at, that blesses other people, that uses the talents that God has given me, ultimately to bless my family first, and then to bless other people. That's sort of the main, I guess, mission, the easiest, to understand. Beyond that, I think the mission of Honest Films is that God has used stories, I mean, since the very beginning, to speak to his people, to move his people, to move all people, and to move and to shape the world. It is the most powerful force, I think, outside of the divine that there is, storytelling. It can do so much. So if he's given me an ability to work with stories and to use them and to play a part in crafting them with other talented people, if I can use those to make people think, to make people go, I know that was a story about a deaf person who got a cochlear implant and now they're able to hear again. And maybe they were able to dance with their daughter at their wedding, right? It's not a religious story, but gosh, isn't there something about that that just makes your heart go, I don't know, man. There must be something more, because that made me feel a way that is beyond just, it's not just sort of like a momentary thing. There's something really special about that. And through film, you can craft those moments all over the place, and they point back to God. There is that peace that by the grace of God is in each one of us, that knows kind of where we came from. And I think telling a great story and making a great film, whether it's a commercial or whatever it is, I think there's an opportunity every single time to tap into. It's like storytelling is this sort of magic trick that we have, that God has given us to talk to one another and to communicate, that kind of cuts past, it sort of takes a shortcut straight to the heart around everything else. And so if you can do that, it makes people feel something really amazing. And I think that points us back to God. Now, someone will watch that and they won't know why. They won't have words for what they're feeling, but I think it will open up that sort of curiosity, gap in their heart and in their mind, and it will make them wonder, hey, maybe I am meant for something more.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy how this is lined up, because I feel like just today, working on Honest Film stuff, I realize how true this is. Today, I showed a client a video we made, and it's a 3 or 4 minute video. I'm just watching the screen the whole time, showing it to them. I turn around and I guess I should preface, this client is it's a family medicine doctor, two Christians who are just really faithful, really joyful, and doing good work. So we got to make a video that showed that really revealed that what they're doing is impactful. So finish showing them the video, turn around, and they're both weeping, like uncontrollably. right? And it's magical. Like I can't really explain it. Like we just made a bunch of images with sounds attached to it, and that was able to cut into their hearts in a way that really moved them. And will hopefully do great things for their business, because you're trying to tell stories that show the good, the true, and the beautiful in a different company, in all these different companies, right? Um, how so does that kind of filter what sort of companies you work for, or are you usually able to find something, like even if it's, hey, we mow lawns, right, or we build this little thing, like how do you show the beauty in all those different sorts of companies?
Yeah, I mean, do we are there some companies that we just go? I mean, of course, there's ideological things, right? Of like, yeah, I don't think that I don't think I can faithfully tell this story, right? So there's that. But then there's also, you know, aside from ideological things, I have to be able to meet with you if you are excited about your company, if you believe in your company, then I think I can believe in it too. I just have to get to why you believe in it. Like, why are you so excited about this pressure washing business? Like, why is it so special to you? Because from the outside, it seems like you're just cleaning people's sidewalk. But as I talk to you about it and you tell me the story of it, then then lights start firing off in my head and I'm going, "Oh, this isn't a story about pressure washing. This is a story about serving other people and the joy that it brings you to serve people or to put things right or to like restore things like to the beauty that they have in a very simple way." And now all of a sudden it's like, now we're not talking about pressure washing. Now we're talking about like doing God's work, right? And now, wow, yeah, this is exciting. I now want to tell this story. So the only time it doesn't work is if I get on a call with you and you're the customer and you're like, yeah, so we sell widgets and they're kind of the same as every other widget, but like ours are blue and you know they don't work that great, but like, you know, we kind of still, you need to sell them and we need to get people to buy them, and so like we want to make a video about them. I'm just like, yeah, I can't help you because because it wouldn't be honest. It's like, you, hey, listen, dude, if you don't care about your product, how am I going to care about it? You know, if you can't even, if you don't even love your own kids, I'm not going to like them at all. But if you do, I don't care. I don't care what kind of business it is. If you care about it, if there's a reason to believe in it, I can make somebody believe about that because all I have to do is basically tell them the truth
Yeah.
and do it in a good way, you know?
Yeah. Well, in those instances where it's a company that actually does believe in its mission and is excited about it, it still requires you to care enough to take interest in what they're doing, right? Really pay attention to what's, like, I can tell yeah, I can tell you're excited. Why are you excited? Like, let's get to the bottom of this. Which ultimately, that's like what it means to just love people generally. I think, in a sense, like you feel loved when people take an interest in you, right? When they're curious what you do, how you're doing, what makes you tick, etc.
Right. And when you meet someone, you know, we've all met people at cocktail parties or birthday parties or church or whatever, and you can tell they're just kind of small talking you. They're just like, "Oh, so what do you do?" And like, and you just can tell they don't really care, which is fine, but it's like, well, just don't even ask, you know? But on the other hand, you know, I've met people who you meet them for the very first time and they're like, "Oh, so hey, do you have kids? Like, what's your wife like?" And you're like, "This person really cares about me. I feel really special right now, you know?" Like Dr. Story was like that. Like he's talking to me like he actually really cares about me. And I'm like, "Wow, I love this dude," you know? So I think that's how you have to treat your customers. And if you can't treat your customers like that, then maybe you shouldn't have a business. Maybe you should just work for somebody else.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Can you, recall any specific times where, you were intentional about loving the customer, just really caring, and they like really noticed it and showed appreciation for it?
A former employee that we had, a really great guy, uh, Ryan once said to me, we were talking about this kind of thing, and he's like, I don't do a really good job. I don't stay up late. I don't work extra hard on this video because of the business. I do it because of Sarah, who's our client at that business, because I want to make her look good. I want her to appreciate the work that we've done. And I think that's really profound. I think if you take that and you apply it across everything you do, you'll do a way better job. Because it's really easy to go like, oh, to heck with this, big company, like whatever, like they're this faceless thing. No, it's a person that you're working with who's trusted you. And so do a good job for them and they will appreciate it. It will leave an impression on them. I think an example I can give of where this manifests in real life and real work. A lot of our work involves going out and telling the stories of real people. So such and such client will have someone who uses their product or has benefited from their service. We will go and do a customer testimonial, for lack of a better word. But basically it turns out being a little mini documentary about that person. We have had this happen several times where we will go out, we'll spend, we get really embedded kind of with their family. We eat dinner with them. We're hanging out on their property and visiting with them. We might go to church with them or go to school with them or whatever it might be. And we'll tell their story. They will, then months later, they will see it and they'll reach back out to us and tell us like, hey, we feel like you really like honored us with that story. And that is, I guess I will say that's very humbling because you feel like, well, gosh, I'm just trying to do my job. And I mean, thank you. But that means a lot when you got to tell somebody's story and they reach back out to you and take time to say, you got my story right. And no one has ever been able to tell my story that way. And that was, and we feel honored by that. That's when I really feel like, gosh, I really like doing this.
I love it. Well, this has been awesome. I guess a good question to start to wrap it up is what are your plans for the future? The industry is changing, and I'm sure ways you've thought about, what you're trying to accomplish with this company have changed as well. Um, yeah, just tell me a little bit more about like what changes in your mentality, what you're trying to do with Honest Films, and maybe a vision for the future.
When Honest Film started out, we were really, really focused on the commercial market. So working for, corporations, sort of medium to large size corporations, telling their stories, helping them to communicate better and more honestly and authentically about themselves. And I love doing that. And I think that will always be a part of what we do. As the business is growing and maturing and changing, and as I look at the world around us right now, I think media has done a really bad job of stewarding the talent that it has to point people in the right direction. I think just by and large, the power of storytelling has been absolutely abused in our world. I think by and large, the power of storytelling has been absolutely abused in our world and used to point people in some really, really destructive and bad directions. Selfishness, uh, lust, greed. Just, I mean, down the line, I think media has just been really abused, and I sort of have taken it a part of my mission. And if I have this company that can make these really nice films, I want to use it to start taking that back. When you look throughout history at artists, scientists, any sort of creative, since the time of Christ, all of the best of those people have been Christians. And not only that, they did their work explicitly for the glory of God. That's why they discovered the things they did. That's why they painted the paintings they made. That's why they wrote and composed the songs that they did. And they were beautiful and you could tell. And it was part of it. And it wouldn't have been as good without that. I want to be a part of bringing that back to today's world. We've taken a little 150-year, 200-year reprieve, a little vacation from being the best of the best as Christians, in media, in anything creative. And I want to be part of bringing that back because there's no reason that we shouldn't be the best. We serve a creative God. We look to him as the creator. We're made in his image. We are inspired by him. Why aren't we doing better work? And I don't just mean making, cheesy Christian films. I mean making the best of the best. And so I have a vision for, a world, a world in 10 or 15 years where people say, hey, if we want this Nike commercial to be the best, we better hire a Christian. If we want this, Tesla ad to be the best, we had better find someone who's a Christian because those guys are bringing something extra to the table. That's the vision that I have for that. And so I want to be a part of that with Honest Films. I still want to, I want to serve just as much, if not even more, all those same corporate clients. I still want to be at the table with them and use whatever influence I have to serve them honestly and in a real way and to make the best work for them. But that's where it all comes from. Because I feel a duty to that. And I think more creatives should do that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's a glorious vision. It's, as you said before, storytelling, particularly visual storytelling, is such a powerful medium. And I think we could point to a lot of the carnage in our culture back to movies and TV shows and all the other sorts of media we've been consuming because it's such a subtle but powerful way to move people towards good or evil. So I think it's time that Christians are vocal, aren't shy about it, and say, "Hey, we've been pushing evil stuff for a long time with this. It's time we push back."
Yeah, and not just on our own channels and in our own little circles, like in the whole world, right? The whole world. So we need to be making the best sitcoms, the best nature documentaries, the best the best war movies, the best of everything we need to be making. And not just sort of like put ourselves over to the side and sort of like remove ourselves from the equation, which is what I feel like we've done for some stupid, foolish reason. I don't know why we've done that. It's like we don't have the courage to be there and stand up for our convictions. So we just pull ourselves off to the side. But we can't do that, right? And it doesn't mean starting with me, it does not mean that I am some pious, you know, perfect, righteous individual. It just means I'm trying to be. But lest anyone be confused, just ride shotgun with me for one day, and you will see. Ask people that I've worked with. Ask some of my business partners. I have plenty of failings, uh, but it's not. I'm not going to let that hold me back from still trying to do what I think is important. In fact, I think it should drive me because I want my son, I want my daughter to grow up better than what I had and their kids better than what they had. And I want them to grow up in a world with better stories. Like if there's a famous saying, politics is downstream of culture, and that's true, but culture is downstream of the stories that we tell. If you want to know anything about a culture, just tell me the top 5 stories that they're telling themselves. Tell me what they're entertaining themselves with, and I will know everything about that culture. And I think if you answered that question today in America and in the West and in the world, it would be a pretty sad report. And there's no reason it needs to be this way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Well, this has been phenomenal. I think a good question to ask as we wrap up is what would be your advice to aspiring creators, aspiring video producers, aspiring business owners, specifically ones who are interested in pursuing excellence for the glory of God? What would be your top advice for those sorts of people?
Hold yourself to a very high standard, first of all, on the little things like showing up on time, delivering things on time, the way that you interact with your customers, the way that you interact with your employees. Hold yourself to a very high standard and don't let yourself be given a pass. Don't buy into the self-help, the me time, mental day, whatever movement. Just throw that away. be the best you can be in every little area and really hold yourself to a very high standard of excellence first and foremost. If you're not, you're sitting in the seat of someone who will, and get out of the way. So, and beyond that, I would say surround yourself with people that have that same high standard and will help to encourage you, hold you accountable, but also just make you excited to be on that same mission. You need to find brothers who will go to battle with you and beside you and do that with you. It's way easier when you do it that way. I have tried to do it by myself or without sort of maybe the right type of encouragement or the right people alongside of me. It's way harder when you have brothers and sisters who are right beside you in that fight and who are lined up with you and have the same vision. Everything becomes so much easier and so much more fulfilling and exciting. So I would say find your group of people that are like that, and don't feel like you're being too exclusive when you're finding that group. Really find that group of people for you, and then go to war and start making great stuff, and just continually hold yourself to that standard of excellence.
I love it. Well, this has been phenomenal. I've found this super helpful. I hope our listeners find it helpful as well. If you want to find out more about Honest Films and the work we're doing, there'll be a link in the description. But until next time, this is Standing Before Kings.